Welcome back to another edition of Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. I'm your humble host, DeShields II, and I am your Philadelphia Eagles news source. I want to talk to you guys about a guy that's been on my mind lately. I want to talk to you about a rookie who I think you guys need to keep your eye on, and that guy is Antwaun Powell-Ryland out of Virginia Tech. He's an edge rusher. The Philadelphia Eagles drafted him in the 6th round, 209th overall. And when I think about Powell-Ryland, all I think about is the upside. I think about the potential for a guy who can probably be a key contributor in the 2025 season and honestly be a key contributor for his entire time with the Philadelphia Eagles because he comes with a full range of pass rush moves. He comes with a full repertoire, the ability to rush from angles and violent hands and the athleticism and the speed and just a very interesting developmental arc that he experienced in college. But before we get too deep into how he can impact the Philadelphia Eagles and where he fits in, I kind of want to double back and think about how he got where he was, right? How was he drafted in the 6th round? How did a guy who was so productive in his final couple years at Virginia Tech fall to the 6th round? And I think I kind of know why and how this thing happened. But let's really go back in time for a little bit. So Antwaun Powell-Ryland, he spent his first 3 college seasons at Florida. That was 2020 to 2022. Remember, 2020 was that COVID season. So a lot of guys were able to get an extra year. So he spent a grand total of 5 years in college, 3 years at Florida, and 2 years at Virginia Tech. Need I remind you, Florida's in the SEC and Virginia Tech is in the ACC. Powell-Ryland ended up transferring to Virginia Tech in 2023. And that's where his production took a major leap. And if you really look at the production at Virginia Tech in comparison to the production at Florida, it's completely night and day. I mean, the guy is not even the same player. And I think the reason for that is while he was at Florida, he was kind of buried on the depth chart. He had limited snaps, and he was kind of seen as a guy that was still developing. So he really wasn't able to make an impact while at Florida for 3 seasons. As a matter of fact, while he was at Florida from 2020 to 2022, he played in 27 games, only logged in 4.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, and 3 forced fumbles. So when you put it in perspective, you ask yourself, how does a guy go from being a non-factor to completely just jumping off the page in 2023 and 2024 at Virginia Tech? Well, I think it's obvious to say that there is a clear competition distinction between the ACC and the SEC, but I don't think that's why Powell-Ryland really improved either. I don't think that's the only reason, right? I mean, it's something to think about if you're evaluating the player. It's something to think about if you're looking at how he handles the competition. But at the same time, he had limited snaps at Florida. So you really didn't get a chance. He really didn't get a chance to really just break out and really spread his wings. But Florida clearly deemed he was still developing. But because of that additional COVID year, he was able to get an additional year at Virginia Tech. And that additional year at Virginia Tech did him wonders. In 2024, his final year in college, he put up 43 total tackles, 29 solo tackles, 19 TFLs, 16 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. He did that in 12 games at Virginia Tech. And in 2023, his first year at Virginia Tech, he played in 13 games, logging in 40 total tackles, 23 solo, 15 TFLs, 9.5 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. So over the past 2 seasons, his 2 seasons at Virginia Tech, he played a grand total of 25 games, logged in 34 tackles for loss, 25.5 sacks, and 6 forced fumbles. So the guy really took a major leap in year 4 and year 5 being in college. And he did all this playing at the ACC. And on top of that, he had games where he logged in 4 sacks, 3 sacks, 2.5. I mean, the guy was just a beast. So one can say, damn, Ryland couldn't really get it going in the SEC. Did he struggle with that competition? But the other side of it is, hey, this guy knows how to feast on people who's not as good as him. So I always like a player who knows how to take advantage of his matchups, but I also want a player who's actually shown the ability to develop. And I think all these conferences, the Power 5 conferences, ACC, SEC, Big 12, Big 10, all those conferences, I think those conferences all have their fair share of competition. And I think each of those conferences have their various strengths and weaknesses. And that goes for the SEC as well. But Antwaun Powell-Ryland, now he's with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was drafted in the 6th round, and a lot of people felt like Antwaun Powell-Ryland at that 6th spot in the 6th round was a steal because of the production. I mean, again, 16 and a half sacks in his final college season, or 16 sacks in his final college season, 25 and a half sacks over the past 2 seasons. I mean, that's legit production, and you can't really turn your head at that. So I think from the Eagles' perspective, they say to themselves, we got ourselves a legit pass rush specialist. Can he get better defending the run? Sure, right? Does he have hitches or weaknesses in his game? Sure. But the guy does bring things to the table that you can really build on, especially when he's going to be playing with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jalen Hunt, Jordan Davis, right? When you factor him into that equation, you say to yourself, you have a guy here that can definitely become an impact player. But things get interesting when you think about the current state of the Eagles depth chart. Keep in mind, the Eagles lost 2 contributors on the edge. They lost Josh Sweat and they lost Brandon Graham to retirement. Josh Sweat ended up making a lot of money with the Arizona Cardinals, so you can't really get mad at him. But you look at the edge rusher position now, you look at that off-ball linebacker position now, when you see Nolan Smith, who's a lock right now. I think Nolan Smith is going to have another breakout season. I think Nolan Smith may go for 10-plus sacks this year. That's just my perspective. You have Jalen Hunt, who's entering year 2, who came on towards the back end of the season after BG got hurt and after he earned the trust of Vic Fangio as the season progressed. Jalen Hunt had a very strong playoff run. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the next step is for Jalen Hunt. He's still a guy that shouldn't be guaranteed anything, but I like his frame. I like his build. I like how violent he is. I like the versatility to his game. I like the athleticism. I like the fact that this guy developed from being a safety to transforming his body and his mentality to being an edge rusher, an off-ball linebacker. So I trust Jalen Hunt's commitment to his development, and I'm looking forward to seeing what year 2 looks like for Jalen Hunt, even though he only had 1.5 sacks in the regular season. But he did log in, I believe, a sack in the Super Bowl. So there's something to be said about that. Then you get the Bryce Huff, a guy who got paid a lot of money, $51 million over 3 years, $34 million guaranteed over the first 2 years. So he's a guy that really didn't have a strong first season with the Philadelphia Eagles. You got to look at him and say to yourself, what went wrong? And we can get into the details about that. The fact that Vic Fangio had him standing up a lot. He's a guy that's more of a 3-point, 4-point stance kind of guy. He likes to put his hands in the dirt. And when he stands up, he can't really get that same speed, that same momentum. And the moment Vic Fangio transitioned him to putting his hands back in the dirt, you saw Bryce Huff's season beginning to turn in his favor, but then he got hurt. Nonetheless, Bryce Huff didn't have a good season at all. I think he logged in about maybe 2.5 sacks, something like that. He didn't have a good season. And it got to a point where Vic Fangio just stopped trusting him altogether. So can Bryce Huff bounce back, right? He's a guy that's getting paid a lot of money, so will he be on his roster when the season starts? Will he be traded? All that stuff still remains to be seen. I look at him as a guy that's really hard to trade with that contract, knowing the production was very lackluster. He doesn't seem like a tradable piece, so he just may be here when the season starts, but that all remains to be seen. But then you get to Azeez Ojulari, a free agent acquisition, who's a guy who really has never struggled to produce, but he struggled to stay healthy, in particular over the past couple seasons. And when you look at the production, you see a guy who clearly knows how to get to the quarterback, a guy who clearly knows how to take advantage of his opportunities, but he just can't stay healthy. So can he stay healthy with the Philadelphia Eagles being in a rotational role, less snaps, less pressure on the body? He's playing with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and all those guys. Can he make an impact on the Eagles? I think Azeez Ojulari is a dark horse on his roster. He may be one of the sack leaders on his team. He could easily give you between 6 to 8 sacks, playing about maybe 35, 40% of the snaps. He's a guy that can really do that for you, especially if he's fresh. And then you get to Josh Uche, another free agent acquisition, a guy who had a really strong, I believe it was his 2022 or 2021 season. I can't quite remember, but he had one season where he had like 11 sacks, and the rest of the years of his career have just been pretty lackluster in terms of production. So can Josh Uche turn back the clock? Can he make this roster, right? I'm not so high on Josh Uche when I think about the acquisitions of Azeez Ojulari and Antwaun Powell-Ryland, right? And I still don't know what Bryce Huff's future is. I find it hard to believe that a guy making that much money is going to get cut, and it'll be a major cap hit to the team. But we'll see how it goes. And then you get the Jihaad Campbell, a rookie that they brought in, drafted in the first round, 31st overall. Jihaad Campbell is a guy who can drop back in coverage, can play off-ball linebacker, can rush the quarterback, can be blitzed through the A-gap, a guy that can run sideline to sideline. He's probably one of your most versatile rookies that you brought in, arguably one of your most versatile players on the roster right now. The Eagles will likely deploy him in edge rusher and pass rusher situations. So you could probably make an argument he's going to be involved in that position battle on the edge as well for snaps. Knowing you got Zack, Baun, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. as well in that linebacker room. You brought in Smile Mondon at that linebacker position. So that linebacker position, and you got Nakobe Dean. Can't forget Nakobe Dean, who's recovering from injury. So that linebacker room is going to get very interesting. But I think the Eagles are going to do everything possible to get Jihaad Campbell on the football field. I think that's something to keep in mind when you think about the position battles for snap counts, for reps at that edge rusher position. So Antwaun Powell-Ryland, he's a guy that I'm really looking forward to watching. He's a guy that I'm really excited about. Again, you can't deny their production. Even though he was drafted in the 6th round, you can't look at that production. Again, 25.5 sacks over the past 2 seasons at Virginia Tech, 6 forced fumbles, 34 tackles for loss. That's something you have to look at and you got to respect. And I think the Eagles want to get him on the football field as soon as possible. I think he's a guy that can make a large impact in clear and obvious pass rush situations. And that's how I view it. So make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed. What's your thoughts on Antwaun Powell-Ryland? Do you think Powell-Ryland is a dark horse to be a large contributor in this rotation at the edge rusher position? Is Antwaun Powell-Ryland the Bryce Huff replacement? Will Bryce Huff get traded or cut at some point in this offseason, right? Give me your thoughts on how you view Antwaun Powell-Ryland and his overall contributions on his team. And it's straight like that. I've been your humble host, Tone DeShields II. You guys have been locked in on Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. And I am your Philadelphia Eagles news source.